Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Back again to talk about my history in World of Warcraft. Wanted to talk about some of my experiences over the years, how I got into the game, what I've enjoyed about the game over the years, and how I've kind of risen through the ranks in terms of rating, all that good stuff. Because recently, due to all the Twitch DMCA takedowns and stuff going on, I had to delete a crazy amount of clips and content and highlights and everything from my channel. So I downloaded a ton of it, and I wanted to put it together in this video and maybe a couple others in the future to start, highlighting a little bit of that without having to worry about the DMCA strikes or whatever. So for me, I started playing in Cataclysm. Actually, I was working at a seafood restaurant. It was like a local place and everything, and my best friend who also worked there was getting back into World of Warcraft around Firelands, and he really wanted to get me to play it. I was about 16, 17 at the time or something like that, I want to say. And mainly I just played a lot of Halo. I played a lot of Xbox. I like playing Crysis 2. I like playing a lot of shooters, and WoW was never something that really crossed my mind until my buddy, who later became my roommate, introduced me to the game. So one day I made an account. I made a rogue, and my rogue was the first character. And let's take it away. Let's start looking at some of the clips as I talk about it, so you can see not only how I've grown over the years, but also how my UI, my stream, all those different things have grown as well. So I got started in Cataclysm, but the earliest streams that I actually have are from Mists of Pandaria. So I got myself started in Cataclysm and started raiding in Dragon Soul, and because I made a rogue, which was what my roommate had made, the rogues were in pretty high demand in Dragon Soul due to the Fangs of the Father legendary. So I was just a casual really in a guild, and they were looking for a new rogue because theirs had just left to go to a different guild because they had Fangs of the Father, and every guild wanted to snipe rogues that already had that legendary and add them to the team and everything, right? So as a result, I started learning how to raid in Firelands, and they were doing Firelands farm basically to get people their legendaries, their legendary staves for the casters. So I got to learn through that, and eventually they added me to the team for Dragon Soul. And unfortunately I didn't stream back then, but I got myself started streaming in Mists of Pandaria after watching Wreckful and the Skill Cap Gaming House. And even though I was never really a PvPer or good at it, it was always just something that was fascinating for me to watch. It was always something I really enjoyed watching, was just people playing together, being able to have a good time, just competing as well was just something that really stood out to me. So that 10-man group that I killed Madness of Deathwing in from Dragon Soul, we merged with the other 10-man group that was in our guild to form a 25-man for Mists. The 25-man really didn't work out. Our two 10-man groups never really meshed, and that was part of the problem with the 10-man, 25-man system. It was very different animals. It was very different encounters as well to kind of expect from the group. So that 10-man group left, we formed our own guild, and eventually merged our guild with kind of like a super guild. It was called Sons of Kronos, and it basically had like 6 or 7 raid teams on it. So we had our primary raid team, and during MOP I also picked up DK and tanked on that a little bit on normal mode, and I started picking up Paladin and started getting more competitive about that. So at the time of this, I didn't really have Priest, and I wasn't really having Priest as something that really stood out to me. It was not one of my initial picks. It wasn't something that really initially stood out to me very much, but that all started turning around when I got a chance to make a Priest on the public test realm. And once I played around with it a little bit, I just absolutely crazy stupid fell in love with playing it. And it also really helped that it was crazy fun to play in dungeon content too. So at the end of Miss Pandaria, I joined a guild called Last Word. I originally was in that Sons of Kronos guild that I told you about. Kind of bounced around a little bit, looking for more serious guilds, and Last Word was one that kind of took a chance on me as I was sort of rising through the ranks. And as luck would have it, their priest healer retired after progression ended, so I jumped at the chance to re-roll to a healer. I jumped at the chance to go play Disc Priest, and I jumped at the chance to go abuse the heck out of some Spirit Shell goodness. So Spirit Shell, back in Mists of Pandaria, you would actually have like holy spells like Flash Heal and Prayer of Healing as part of Discipline's toolkit. and you could basically just use Spirit Shell on those abilities to stack up some absolutely massive absorption effects. So on some of the pulls like you'll see right here in Scarlet Monastery, I was just spamming Flash Heal into the tank and their health pool didn't even move at all because I was stacking Absorb on top of Absorb on top of Absorb without end. That was definitely one of the big highlights of the expansion. It was definitely one of the probably most enjoyable times was trying to push these challenge modes, because unlike a lot of Mythic Plus today, it was really how much can you abuse some of these dungeons, how much can you abuse some of the different bugs that are going on, how can you abuse Vengeance as well, as Vengeance just capping it and tanks being the top DPS and everything was pretty much the norm throughout a lot of it. It also was important to note that in challenge modes, your gear was scaled down instead of up. So as a result, while your gear was just scaled down, you were trying to pick and put together as many socketed setups as you could from all the other raids of the expansion. So at the end of the Siege of Orgrimmar, you know, you had the access to all the other raids and everything like that, and you could go back, put together a perfect socketed setup with all the items, all the pieces that you would want, and you would have just this obscenely good set. It was just the best possible thing out there. And that's what we would do as we were going through. And being able to go from barely squeezing by in the gold challenge modes to just utterly dominating them was an absolute pleasure. It was just something that over time, you know, it was the more and more comfortable that you could get with these dungeons, faster that you could push them, the more little bugs that you'd find in the community. And we picked up a couple realm bests, got our Mistwalker title and everything like that before the new expansion hit. And then we stepped into Warlords of Draenor. And Warlords of Draenor was one where I was pretty much in last word for most of the expansion, or about half of the expansion. And then I ended up joining Incarnate and try to push it just a little bit further as I was starting the expansion, kind of switch hitting, because like I mentioned, when that priest retired, they came back, they wanted to raid again, wanted to raid in Warlords of Draenor, so I ended up playing a little bit of Shadow, a little bit of Disc, a little bit of Holy, just kind of a little bit of everything as that expansion got going, and I really settled into playing Holy Priest quite a bit, and that's where I think a lot of people started getting more introduced to my content, because that was also where I got really involved in the healing community, and just guide writing, class discussion, all of those different things became a lot more of a factor, and content creation became less of, oh yeah, this is just some hobby I'll be doing, you know, while I'm working at the seafood restaurant, going to community college, you know, focusing on what I'm going to do as a degree or everything like that. Content creation started becoming more and more of something I just wanted to be able to do full time, and it really started a lot in Warlords of Draenor, where I didn't really see a lot of Holy Priest guides that I liked, that I felt were that interesting. People were asking me a lot of times as I got started streaming, my stream of 10 to 15 viewers at that time, to write a Holy Priest guide. So at one point I did. Some of my guildies posted it on Reddit. It was just linked to our guild site. So I posted it to the guild site, and they posted it on Reddit. Got some good traction, and that's where I started really stepping up in terms of content creation, to the point that I'm at right now, where I'm writing the guides for Wowhead, for Disc and Holy. So Warlords, and most specifically the end of Warlords, were really big times for just getting more involved, talking about Priest, getting passionate about it, you know, being able to chase farm parses and everything like that was always a blast. So from that point, I also had some time to play some more alts. Like I said, I brought the DK back. Playing Blood DK with Breath of Sindragosa is always going to be one of those big highlights that I had, because it was just like a spec that you were trying to maintain this buff as long as you possibly could, trying to be able to do as much self-healing as you possibly could muster, and more of that perfect, amazing trait multi-strike just made your life so much easier. So it was crazy to see how some of the specs have kind of grown, or, you know, have kind of moved towards or moved away some specs as well. But yeah, it's something that I definitely look back to with just crazy amount of pleasure, an absolute crazy amount of pleasure. So I joined Incarnate on the later half of Warlords of Draenor, and I stayed with Incarnate up until Nighthold as Legion got going. And Legion, I think, was always a very interesting expansion for me, because while the content was great, I think I definitely bounced around a pretty crazy amount for guilds that, looking back, I wish I didn't, and I wish I'd kind of stayed with more of a singular set team. And it's interesting to see some of the things, where I've bounced around to, some of the lessons learned, and this was also one of the moments where I also got my wake-up call that, it's not just the numbers, man. It's not just the numbers, it's not just that meter, and that was also where mechanics became more and more important, and players around me also started getting better and better and better, to the point where, it's not a suitable excuse anymore to, only die a handful of times or anything. You gotta have less than that. You gotta reduce all your damage taken, and that was what I was telling you guys in the previous video, was that it's so much more than being better than the next guy. It's about making sure that you're the best possible raider that you can be, and Legion, I think, in general, was one of those points that I learned, very heavily, that I needed to clean up a lot of areas of my play to make sure I'm a more solid overall raider, rather than just somebody who can do a lot of healing whenever they're alive, right? So, Fallen Avatar was one of the fights that I was probably the weakest on back in the day, and there were other fights, of course, but I think that was one that always kind of stood out in my memory of progression, that I definitely was like, wow, this is absolutely not as clean as it should be. It's absolutely, I'm playing greedier in these areas, playing greedier in those areas, and not to make any sort of excuses, but UI helps, and my UI back then certainly sucked, as I'm sure some of you guys in the comments are going to say as well. So, definitely a wake-up call for me. And I ended up, at the end of Legion, out of NA rating really entirely, because as I was doing MDI, I started MDI in Legion in 2017. I got a Twitter DM one day, and they were like, hey, we're going to do this dungeon speed racing content. Do you think you want to cast that? Do you think you want to commentate something like that? And, like I said, I'd done Warlords of Draenor and Mist of Pandaria challenge modes. I did, some M+, but I wasn't really focused on M+. I was much more focused on rating, because the rating content in Legion was so good. And it was one of those interesting things where it was like, oh, well, sure, I'll give it a shot. I'll see what comes from it and everything. And that was where a lot of it just took off. And that was one of the things that really helped go full-time with streaming as well, was being able to kind of just rely on another job and better consistency, as I was also finishing up college at this time, and finishing my finance degree as well. So that was probably one of the biggest areas that was just kind of a pivot point, I'd say, in my life, where I was picking up work from Wowhead, picking up work from casting, still streaming as much as I could, and all these different things definitely became a challenge to juggle while I was in school at the time. So as Legion wrapped up, I finished school, and I ended up moving down to Austin, Texas, because I lived in Northern Virginia for basically my entire life. And I moved down to Austin, Texas, because that's where my brother lived, and as luck had it, right as I graduated, just like right as I graduated, my brother's roommate moved out. He had a spare room, rent was cheap, and that was pretty much my jumping off point for getting into streaming, getting into full-time content creation. And really, I got very lucky that the stars kind of aligned in that way as well. So with BFA coming along, like I mentioned, I ended up joining Future and got myself ready to raid more hours, more serious times, in many cases, more stress, more work and everything like that. But it was something I really wanted to embrace, and something I really enjoyed being able to do, because once again, there's always that next challenge, and a lot of times there's always that next step as you go further in raiding. And in my position, that was raiding on EU, having a bit of a culture difference and everything like that, and also just having a really heavy time difference in how much I would be raiding, when I would be raiding, all those different things. So when we started day raiding, we day raided day 1 for every single tier with Future. We started at like 4 a.m. or something like that. And let me tell you, the first time I did that in Aldir, it kicked my butt. I was not prepared. As we ended up getting to Vectis on day 1, I was just bone tired. I was just falling asleep at the wheel and everything. And that level of marathon playing, getting up each day, playing, raiding for 6+ hours and stuff, definitely started wearing on me, and wearing on me early. and that was an area, once again, you gotta get used to. You gotta be able to check yourself. You gotta be able to get more experienced at. And by the time BOD, Eternal Palace, Nyalotha started rolling around, that's where I got a lot more comfortable with it. And I started really getting into my groove of, all right, I can do this. I can prepare. Like, I can food prep a little bit, and that was one thing that definitely took some time to get used to, was food prepping and making sure that I had exactly what I needed to perform. So it was a huge learning opportunity, and as Future and I finished Nyalotha Progression, that was where I really started thinking about, well, what would be the differences for raid times? What would I be looking at? Because when I left NA, I definitely, was not the player that I wanted to be. I wasn't playing at the level that I wanted to be. And in many respects, Slood and Future and everybody took a chance on me to see if I would just work out. And that's not always the easiest thing to do. Certainly not when you're a streamer and, you played like crap a lot in Legion, right? So coming off of that and, spending an entire expansion playing in BFA and everything, I was looking at coming back to NA and getting back to those raid times, but also like the raid times that I was comfortable with, where it's afternoons, it's evening raids and everything like that, rather than morning raids. But I still was very interested in finishing early. I found a lot of times, just for my own personal sake, once I got used to the marathon raids of 6+ hours a day, I really enjoyed it, and I really hated the anticipation of like waiting for the next raid day. I'd been in a number of guilds that were, 5 days a week, 4 hours a night, something like that, and I was just kind of craving more. I was like, man, I hate being constrained by the time. I hate having to stop pulls in this boss because we got to go do farm, or stop this because we're out of time. And that's where, my philosophy or my idea of what I wanted to do for Shadowlands came to joining Imperative. And the idea of having, such stable leadership with Rig, having a lot of the old Blood Legion raiders coming back, and also just making sure that there was a healing team that I knew that I would be successful with, knew that I'd be able to get along well with, was just really ideal for me. So as it stands right now, that's my quick 17-18 minute history with World of Warcraft. I am currently raiding in Lazarus Imperative now. As we get ourselves ready for Shadowlands, we've done all of our raid testing together. We've had crazy great attendance for all of it. And I'm very excited for what's going to happen, not only for myself, but also for the guild as we get ourselves started in Castle Nathria. And, as we get a lot tighter as a guild, as we start seeing how progression is really going to unfold. One of the biggest highlights is, at the time of this video, at 11:11 at 1 a.m., we just got done watching a movie together in guild. And, we just always have people who are online, who are in Discord, shooting the shit and talking it up, and it makes me excited. It makes me excited, and over the years, there's been, ups and downs with raiding, with life, but it's absolutely fascinating to see how those things change you, change your attitude, change your behavior, watching some of these VODs and seeing the person I was years ago and the person I am now. It's, sometimes I cringe, but sometimes I just smile, because, that's life for you, right? That's life for you, and I think Twitch kind of gives you a rare opportunity to be able to directly look back at that, and I guess social media does in general as well. But you kind of get to look back at that stuff and say, wow, that happened a while ago. So let me know what you guys think. Bit of a different video format, but hey, I thought it would be fun. If you guys got any questions I didn't answer in here, feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. Hope you all have a good one. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you like the videos, also subscribe, hit the thumbs up, get the algorithms going. You guys know. Thank you so much for watching. I love your faces. I'll catch you all next time.